The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from dozens of species gathered for what many considered the most important session in centuries. High above the crystal dome ceiling, 3 moons cast their pale light through the transparent walls, illuminating the worried faces of beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Ambassador Zethkar of the Reptilian Dominion flicked his forked tongue nervously as he reviewed the datapad in his scaled hands. The information contained within would change everything they thought they knew about the newest species to join their ranks. Across the circular chamber, the insectoid hive queen Zara clicked her mandibles in agitation, her compound eyes reflecting the holographic displays that showed disturbing footage from the Outer Rim colonies. At the center of the chamber stood Director Voss, a tall, ethereal being whose translucent skin pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that indicated extreme stress. As the head of the Galactic Species Classification Bureau, Voss had been the one to initially categorize the humans when they first made contact 6 months ago. That classification now seemed like a terrible mistake. "Esteemed colleagues," Voss began, his voice carrying across the chamber through neural implants that translated his words into dozens of languages simultaneously. "We have gathered here today to address a critical error in our initial assessment of the species known as humans from the planet Earth." A collective murmur rippled through the assembly. The Aquatic Federation representative, a being that resembled a massive jellyfish floating in a water-filled mobility suit, pulsed with concerned colors. The silicon-based crystalline collective's ambassador remained motionless, but the harmonic frequencies emanating from their geometric form indicated deep unease. Voss gestured to the massive holographic display that dominated the center of the chamber. Images began to cycle through, showing peaceful human settlements, their simple technology, and their apparently docile behavior during first contact. Based on our standard classification protocols, we categorized humans as a Level 2 prey species. Their forward-facing eyes we attributed to fruit-gathering evolution. Their bipedal stance seemed inefficient for escape. Their lack of natural weapons like claws, fangs, or toxic secretions suggested they were herbivorous pacifists. The images shifted, showing the initial diplomatic exchanges. Humans had approached with open hands, smiling faces, and gifts of art and music. They spoke of peace, cooperation, and their excitement to join the galactic community. Everything about their behavior reinforced the Council's initial assessment. "We assigned them to Agricultural Colony Designation 7, Voss continued, believing they would be perfect settlers for the peaceful farming worlds in the Outer Rim. We thought they would be safe there, away from the hunting grounds where predator species conduct their territorial disputes." Ambassador Krell of the Ursine clans, a massive bear-like creature with cybernetic enhancements, growled low in his throat. "Get to the point, Voss." What happened out there? The holographic display changed dramatically. Suddenly, the peaceful images were replaced with footage from security cameras on Mining Station Omega-7. The timestamp showed it was only 3 days old. The chamber fell silent as they watched human colonists going about their daily routines, tending to their hydroponic gardens and operating mining equipment with the calm efficiency they had come to expect from the supposed prey species. Then, the raider attack began. The Bloodclaw Raiders were a notorious predator species, resembling massive wolves that walked upright. They were known throughout the galaxy for their brutal efficiency in hunting and their complete lack of mercy for prey species. Their ships had descended upon Mining Station Omega-7 like harbingers of death, expecting to find defenseless humans cowering in terror. What they found instead defied every classification system the Council had ever developed. The first sign that something was wrong came when the raider boarding party breached the main airlock. Instead of finding panicked humans fleeing in terror, they encountered organized resistance. The humans moved with a coordination that spoke of military training, taking defensive positions with a speed and efficiency that stunned the attacking predators. "This is impossible," whispered the Avian Federation's representative, her feathered crest rising in alarm. "Prey species don't fight back. They flee. That's the natural order." But the humans on the recording were doing far more than fighting back. They were winning. The footage showed a human female, no larger than an adolescent of most predator species, using mining tools as weapons with devastating effectiveness. She moved through the corridors of the station like a phantom, appearing behind blood-claw warriors and eliminating them with terrifying precision. Her movements were fluid, calculated, and completely devoid of the panic that should have overwhelmed any prey species facing natural predators. In another section of the station, a group of humans had turned the mining facility's industrial equipment into an elaborate trap system. Gravity manipulators that normally moved ore became crushing devices. Laser cutters designed for precision mining work became weapons of incredible destructive power. The humans adapted their environment into a killing field with a creativity that chilled every observer in the council chamber. But it was the humans' eyes that truly disturbed the council members. There was no fear there, no desperate panic of cornered prey. Instead, there was something else entirely, something that predator species recognized on a fundamental level but had never seen in prey. It was the cold calculation of a hunter that had found worthy game. The most shocking moment came when the Bloodclaw Raider captain, a massive creature that stood nearly 3 meters tall and had terrorized dozens of colonies, found himself cornered by a single human male. The human was unremarkable by galactic standards: average height, no visible weapons, wearing simple mining clothes. He should have been easy prey for a creature designed for killing. The fight lasted less than 30 seconds. The human moved with a fluid grace that spoke of training and instinct working in perfect harmony. He used the raider's own momentum against him, turning the creature's predatory instincts into a weakness. When the dust settled, the mighty raider captain lay unconscious on the floor, while the human calmly secured the creature's weapons and called for medical assistance. "Medical assistance," Voss repeated, his bioluminescent skin flickering with confusion. "They didn't kill their attackers. They subdued them and provided medical care. What kind of predator shows mercy to defeated enemies?" The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every species in the council had their place in the galactic ecosystem. Predators hunted, prey fled or hid, and the balance was maintained through natural order. But humans seemed to exist outside this system entirely, exhibiting behaviors that belonged to both categories and neither. The recording continued, showing the aftermath of the failed raid. The surviving Bloodclaw Raiders were not only alive but receiving medical treatment from the very humans they had tried to slaughter. The humans moved among their former attackers with calm professionalism, treating wounds and ensuring the creature's survival. It was a display of mercy that no known predator species would ever show. But perhaps most disturbing of all was the conversation between the human settlement leader and the captured raider captain. The human, a middle-aged woman named Sarah Chen, sat across from the massive predator with the casual confidence of someone conducting a business meeting. "Why did you come here?" she asked, in perfectly translated Bloodclaw dialect. The raider captain, still groggy from unconsciousness, snarled his response. "You are prey. We hunt. It is the natural way." Sarah's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes shifted. It was subtle, barely noticeable, but every predator species in the council chamber felt their primitive brain stems scream warnings at them. "No," she said quietly. "You're mistaken. We're not prey." The way she said it, with such absolute certainty, made the raider captain's ears flatten against his skull in an instinctive submission response. "Then what are you?" he whispered. Sarah stood up, and for a moment, despite being half his size, she seemed to tower over the massive predator. "We're something new." The recording ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. The implications of what they had witnessed were staggering. For millions of years, the galactic community had operated on the principle that every species fell into one of several clearly defined categories: predators, prey, scavengers, and the rare omnivore species that could adapt to fill multiple ecological niches. But humans seemed to transcend these categories entirely. Director Voss's skin had shifted to deep purple hues that indicated profound confusion. Our xenobiological experts have analyzed this footage extensively. The humans display pack-hunting instincts that rival the most sophisticated predator species. They show tool use and environmental adaptation that exceeds even our most advanced civilizations. But they also demonstrate empathy and mercy toward their enemies that is unprecedented in any known predator species. Ambassador Zethkar raised a scaled hand. "What are you saying, Director? That our classification system is fundamentally flawed?" "I'm saying," Voss replied slowly, "that we may have encountered something that our classification system was never designed to handle. The humans call themselves omnivores, but that term doesn't begin to describe what we observed. They are capable of being both predator and protector, hunter and healer, warrior and peacekeeper, all within the same individual." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter as representatives tried to process this information. Species that had never questioned their place in the galactic order suddenly found themselves wondering if everything they understood about natural law was incomplete. Hive Queen Zara's mandibles clicked rapidly in what her species considered deep thought. "If humans are not prey, then what else have we misclassified? How many other species might be more than they appear?" It was a terrifying question because it implied that the Council's authority, based on their understanding of natural order, might be built on fundamentally flawed assumptions. If they had so completely misjudged humanity, what other errors had they made? The holographic display shifted again, showing star charts with human colony locations marked in red. "There's more," Voss announced grimly. "The Bloodclaw Raiders weren't the only predator species to encounter human settlements this week. We have reports from 7 different sectors where human colonies have been attacked by various predator groups. In every case, the results have been the same." More footage began to play, showing different human settlements facing different predator species. The Void Stalkers, crystalline creatures that could phase through solid matter, found themselves outmaneuvered by humans who somehow predicted their movements. The Plague Swarm, a hive-mind insect species that overwhelmed colonies through sheer numbers, discovered that humans could coordinate defensive strategies with a precision that matched their own collective consciousness. In each case, the humans not only survived, but emerged victorious, often with minimal casualties on either side. They seem to possess an almost supernatural ability to end conflicts quickly and decisively while minimizing harm to all parties involved. "This isn't just advanced technology or superior training," observed the Crystalline Collective's ambassador, their harmonic voice resonating through the chamber's speakers. "This is something deeper. These humans fight like they understand their opponents better than the opponents understand themselves." The observation sent a chill through the assembly because it raised an uncomfortable question. If humans could so easily defeat predator species that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia, what did that make humans themselves? As the evidence mounted, one thing became crystal clear to everyone in the chamber. The Galactic Council had made perhaps the greatest classification error in their history. Humans were not prey species that needed protection from galactic predators. They were something far more complex and potentially far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. The session was called to recess, But as representatives filed out of the chamber, whispered conversations could be heard in dozens of languages, all centered around the same terrifying question. If humans weren't prey, and they weren't traditional predators, then what exactly had the Council just welcomed into the galactic community? The emergency session of the Galactic Council reconvened 12 hours later, but the atmosphere had changed dramatically. Where there had once been curiosity and concern, now there was barely contained fear. Representatives sat farther apart than usual, and several species that normally dominated conversations through their predatory confidence now spoke in hushed, nervous tones. Director Voss stood before the assembly once again, but this time he was accompanied by Dr. Elena Vasquez, the first human to be invited to address the council directly. Her presence in the chamber represented a historic moment, though perhaps not for the reasons originally intended. What was meant to be a ceremonial welcome for a new prey species had become something entirely different. Elena stood barely 1.7 meters tall, unremarkable by the standards of most council species. She wore simple diplomatic attire and carried herself with a relaxed confidence that many observers found unsettling. Her eyes moved slowly around the chamber, taking in the diverse array of galactic representatives with the calm assessment of someone cataloging potential threats and allies with equal efficiency. "Honored members of the Council," Director Voss began, his bioluminescent skin cycling through patterns that indicated extreme stress. "Dr. Vasquez has agreed to help us understand the discrepancies between our initial classification of her species and the recent events we have observed." Elena stepped forward with fluid grace, her movements economical and precise. When she spoke, her voice carried easily through the vast chamber without amplification, projected with the confident clarity of someone accustomed to command situations. "Thank you for allowing me to address you directly," she said, offering a slight bow that somehow managed to be respectful without appearing submissive. "I understand there has been some confusion about what my species represents. I hope I can provide some clarity." Ambassador Krell of the Ursine clans leaned forward in his massive chair, his cybernetic eye focusing on Elena with predatory interest. "Dr. Vasquez, our classification systems have served the galaxy well for millions of years. Every species has their place in the natural order. Predators hunt, prey flee, scavengers clean up the remains. Where exactly do humans fit in this system?" Elena's expression remained neutral, but something shifted in her posture. It was subtle, but every predator species in the chamber felt their instincts react to it. "With respect, Ambassador Krell, I think that question reveals the fundamental limitation in your classification system. You're trying to categorize species based on single-dimensional behavioral patterns, but life is more complex than that." She gestured to the holographic display, which showed Earth's evolutionary timeline. "On our planet, we didn't evolve to fill a single ecological niche. We evolved to adapt to any niche necessary for survival. We can be persistence hunters when we need to track prey across vast distances. We can be ambush predators when the situation calls for stealth and patience. We can be pack hunters when coordination is required. But we can also be protectors, healers, and builders when those roles serve our survival better." Hive Queen Zara's compound eyes reflected the display as she studied the evolutionary data. "Your species evolved from persistence hunters, but you developed agriculture, medicine, and technology that suggests cooperative rather than competitive behavior. How do you reconcile these contradictions?" "They're not contradictions," Elena replied calmly. "They're adaptations. Humans learned early that survival often depends on flexibility rather than specialization. A successful human community needs individuals who can hunt when food is scarce, fight when threatened, heal when injured, and build when shelter is needed. We developed the capacity for all of these roles because rigid specialization is actually a survival disadvantage in changing environments." The silicon-based crystalline collective's ambassador resonated with harmonic frequencies that indicated deep analysis. This explains the tactical flexibility we observed in the recent conflicts, but it doesn't explain the mercy shown to defeated enemies. Predator species eliminate threats. Your species preserves them. This is not logical behavior for a survival-focused species. Elena's eyes sharpened slightly, and again, predator species throughout the chamber felt their primitive brain stems react with warning signals. Actually, it's the most logical behavior possible. Eliminating enemies is a short-term solution that often creates long-term problems. But converting enemies into allies or at least neutral parties? That's a strategy that builds lasting security. She activated a personal holographic device, displaying data from Earth's history. On our planet, humans faced constant threats from other predator species, environmental challenges, and eventually from other human groups. We learned that the most successful communities weren't necessarily the ones that could kill the most enemies, but the ones that could turn the most enemies into non-threats through diplomacy, integration, or deterrence. The display showed various historical examples, from ancient human societies that absorbed conquered peoples instead of eliminating them, to modern conflict resolution techniques that focused on rehabilitation rather than punishment. You see, Elena continued, we discovered that true apex predator behavior isn't about being the most violent or destructive. It's about being so overwhelmingly superior that you don't need to be violent or destructive except when absolutely necessary. The most successful human societies were those that projected strength so convincingly that most potential enemies chose cooperation over confrontation. Ambassador Zethkar's forked tongue flicked nervously. Are you saying that the mercy shown to the Bloodclaw Raiders was actually a demonstration of superior predatory behavior? I'm saying that humans have learned to weaponize mercy, Elena replied with disturbing calm. Every raider who survives an encounter with human colonists returns to their people with a very specific message. Humans are not prey. They are not easily intimidated, but they can be reasonable if approached with respect rather than aggression. The implications of this statement sent ripples of unease through the chamber. The idea that mercy could be used as a strategic weapon was alien to most species present. Predators understood dominance displays and territorial marking, but using compassion as a form of psychological warfare was beyond their experience. Director Voss's skin patterns shifted to deep blues and purples. Dr. Vasquez, are you saying that humanity's peaceful approach to first contact was also a strategic demonstration? Elena's smile was small, but somehow managed to convey depths of meaning that made several council members shift uncomfortably. Director Voss, humans have been observing galactic civilization for much longer than you might think. Our deep space monitoring stations detected council communications decades before we made official contact. We studied your classification systems, your political structures, your military capabilities, and your social dynamics. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humans hadn't stumbled into galactic civilization as innocent newcomers. They had been studying it, analyzing it, and planning their approach. When we decided to make contact, Elena continued, we chose our presentation very carefully. We appeared as we wanted you to see us, not necessarily as we are. Peaceful, eager to please, technologically inferior, and completely unthreatening. We let you classify us as prey because it served our purposes. What purposes? Demanded Ambassador Krell, his voice carrying a growl of suppressed aggression. To be underestimated, Elena replied simply. To be placed in positions where we could observe and learn without being seen as a threat. To be given access to information and resources that you would never share with a species you perceived as competition. To be positioned where we could build relationships and establish ourselves before anyone realized what we actually represented. The tactical brilliance of the strategy was undeniable, but it raised terrifying questions about human intentions. If they had been manipulating the Council from the very beginning, what were their ultimate goals? Hive Queen Zara's mandibles clicked rapidly. The colony assignments, the resource allocations, the technological exchanges, all of it was based on the assumption that you were a harmless prey species. If that assumption is false, then you've been giving potential apex predators exactly what they need to establish themselves throughout the galaxy. Elena finished the thought calmly. The chamber erupted in agitated discussion as representatives realized the scope of the situation. Human colonies now existed on dozens of worlds throughout Council space. They had been given access to galactic communication networks, transportation systems, and trade routes. They had been integrated into the civilian population of countless worlds, positioned to observe and influence galactic society from within. Director Voss called for order, his bioluminescent skin flashing urgent patterns. Dr. Vasquez, you speak of humanity as if it represents a threat to galactic stability. Are you declaring hostile intentions toward the Council? Elena's expression remained perfectly calm, but her words carried the weight of absolute certainty. Director, humans have no desire to conquer or destroy galactic civilization. We want to be part of it, but we want to be part of it as equals, not as pets or livestock. The classification error wasn't accidental on our part. We allowed it because it was necessary. Necessary for what? Pressed the Aquatic Federation representative, their water-filled suit bubbling with agitation. To prevent a war that nobody could win, Elena replied gravely. Director, your council controls a galaxy-spanning civilization with trillions of beings and military technology that spans millions of years of development. If humans had arrived announcing ourselves as apex predators, what would have been the natural response? The question didn't need to be answered. Every representative in the chamber understood galactic politics well enough to know that the appearance of a new apex predator species would have triggered immediate military action. The existing predator species wouldn't tolerate competition, and the Council would have seen humanity as a destabilizing force. So instead, Elena continued, we chose infiltration over invasion, observation over confrontation, and integration over domination. We became part of your civilization before revealing our true capabilities. Now, any action taken against humanity would require actions taken against human communities that are already embedded throughout Council space. The strategic masterstroke was breathtaking in its scope and terrifying in its implications. Humans hadn't conquered the galaxy through force. They had conquered it through misdirection and patience, establishing themselves so thoroughly that removing them would require the Council to attack its own civilian populations. But the raiders, Ambassador Zethkar said weakly, when they attacked human settlements, they revealed what we are when we're threatened, Elena confirmed. That wasn't planned, but it wasn't unwelcome either. It was probably time for the Council to understand what you're really dealing with. She gestured to the holographic display, which now showed detailed analyses of the recent conflicts. Every engagement followed the same pattern: overwhelming tactical superiority combined with strategic mercy. We didn't just defeat those raiders. We sent a message to every predator species in the galaxy. Humans are not prey, but humans are also not your enemies unless you make them your enemies. The Crystalline Collective's ambassador resonated with frequencies that indicated deep concern. What you describe is not predator behavior or prey behavior. It is something outside our understanding of natural law. Elena nodded approvingly. Now you're beginning to understand. Humans evolved beyond simple predator-prey dynamics because we faced threats that simple specialization couldn't handle. We developed the ability to be whatever we need to be in any given situation. Predator, protector, diplomat, warrior, healer, or builder, all as circumstances require. "And what do circumstances require now?" Director Voss asked quietly. Helena's expression softened slightly, showing what might have been genuine warmth. "Now, circumstances require honesty. The initial deception served its purpose, but maintaining it would ultimately be more harmful than helpful. Humans want to be part of galactic civilization, but we want to be acknowledged for what we actually are." "Which is?" prompted Hive Queen Zara. Elena paused, considering her words carefully. "We are a species that survived by becoming adaptable enough to fill any necessary role. We are natural apex predators who learned that the most effective predation isn't about hunting other species, but about making other species want to cooperate with us. We are builders who understand that the strongest structures are built on mutual benefit rather than domination." She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with representative after representative. "We are your newest neighbors, and we're going to be here for a very long time. The question isn't whether you can accept us, because we're already here. The question is whether you're going to work with us as equals or force us to find other solutions." The threat was delivered with such calm reasonableness that it took several moments for its full implications to register. Humans weren't asking permission to join galactic civilization. They were informing the Council that they already had joined it, and now the Council needed to decide how to respond to that reality. As Elena concluded her presentation and left the chamber, the Council representative sat in stunned silence. The careful balance of galactic civilization, built over millions of years of understanding natural law and species classification, had been fundamentally altered in the span of a single day. They now faced a species that could be predator or prey, aggressor or protector, threat or ally, all depending on how they chose to treat them. It was a level of adaptability that their rigid classification system simply couldn't handle. The age of predictable galactic order was ending, and the age of dealing with humanity was about to begin. 6 months after Dr. Elena Vasquez's revelation to the Galactic Council, the galaxy had become a very different place. The emergency sessions had continued for weeks, as representatives struggled to understand the implications of having a species that defied all established classification systems embedded throughout their civilization. But as shocking as the initial revelation had been, it was the aftermath that truly transformed galactic society. Ambassador Krell of the Ursine clans found himself in a position he had never expected to occupy, sitting across a negotiation table from a human diplomat and feeling genuinely uncertain about the outcome. The human, a woman named Captain Sarah Martinez, was discussing trade agreements with the same casual confidence that she might use to order lunch. Yet Krell's predator instincts continued to send him warning signals every time she spoke. "The mineral rights to the asteroid belt in the Kepler system are valuable," Martinez was saying, reviewing the holographic displays that showed the proposed mining operation. "But I think you're undervaluing the long-term strategic implications of the location." Krell's cybernetic eye focused on the tactical data. The asteroid belt was indeed rich in rare metals, but it was also positioned along major shipping routes between 3 different sectors. "What strategic implications?" Martinez smiled, and Krell felt his fur stand on end, despite the completely non-threatening nature of the expression. "Captain, that belt sits at the intersection of Bloodclaw territory, Void Stalker hunting grounds, and civilian trade routes. Any mining operation there is going to need serious protection, and protection costs money." She gestured to additional data that showed shipping route analyses and historical attack patterns. "But what if, instead of just mining the asteroids, we turned the operation into a secure way station? A place where civilian ships could dock for repairs and resupply under the protection of a joint human-Ursine security force?" The tactical brilliance of the proposal was immediately obvious. Instead of a vulnerable mining operation that would require constant protection, They would create a fortified position that generated multiple revenue streams while providing strategic control over a crucial intersection of space lanes. The raiders would never dare attack a joint operation, Krell admitted grudgingly. Your species' reputation has spread quickly through predator channels. Most raider groups now actively avoid human-protected assets. Martinez nodded approvingly. And your people's reputation for overwhelming firepower would handle any raiders too stupid to avoid us. Together, we create a security presence that's stronger than either of our species could manage alone. This was the pattern that had emerged throughout the galaxy over the past 6 months. Humans weren't conquering or dominating other species. Instead, they were making themselves so valuable as allies that other species actively sought their partnership. It was a form of soft expansion that was simultaneously more effective and more disturbing than traditional conquest. Meanwhile, on the Crystalline Collective's homeworld of Resonance Prime, Dr. Elena Vasquez was participating in an entirely different kind of historic moment. She stood within the Great Harmony Chamber, a massive crystalline structure where the collective made their most important decisions through harmonic consensus. No organic being had ever been invited into the chamber before, but humans had already shattered so many precedents that one more seemed almost routine. The collective's decision-making process was unlike anything in galactic civilization. Hundreds of crystalline beings would resonate at specific frequencies, creating complex harmonic patterns that somehow encoded information, analysis, and collective judgment. Elena couldn't participate directly, but she wore a specialized translation device that allowed her to understand the harmonic conversations taking place around her. The topic under discussion was the philosophical crisis that humanity had created throughout galactic civilization. For millions of years, the galaxy had operated on the principle that every species had a fixed nature and role. Predators hunted, prey fled, scavengers cleaned up, and the rare omnivore species served as neutral mediators. But humans represented something that their philosophy had never considered: a species whose nature was defined by their ability to transcend fixed roles. The harmonics swirled around Elena as hundreds of crystalline minds grappled with the implications. How could a civilization based on natural order accommodate a species whose defining characteristic was their ability to defy natural order? How could they maintain social stability when one species could shift roles depending on circumstances? Through her translator, Elena could follow the philosophical debate unfolding in frequencies beyond human hearing. Some members of the collective argued that humans represented evolution beyond the normal constraints of specialized adaptation. Others worried that human adaptability was actually a form of evolutionary instability that could spread to other species through cultural contamination. But it was the eldest of the collective, a crystalline being whose resonant frequency was so deep it could barely be detected, who posed the most profound question. Perhaps the real question is not how we accommodate this new species, but whether their existence forces us to reconsider our understanding of what civilization itself should be. The harmonic discussion that followed touched on concepts that pushed the boundaries of galactic philosophy. If humans could successfully adapt to any role as circumstances required, did that suggest that specialized roles were actually limitations rather than strengths? If one species could transcend the predator-prey dynamic through strategic thinking and adaptability, could other species learn to do the same? Elena listened to the philosophical revolution unfolding around her and realized that humanity's impact on galactic civilization went far beyond trade agreements and security partnerships. They were forcing the galaxy to question fundamental assumptions that had shaped society for millions of years. On the other side of the galaxy, the impact of humanity's revelation was being felt in ways that were both more practical and more dangerous. The Bloodclaw Raider clans had called their first great gathering in over 1,000 years, assembling their most powerful war chiefs to decide how to respond to the human problem. War Chief Thaxmore stood before the assembled raiders, his massive frame scarred from countless battles, addressing a crowd of predators who had never before encountered prey that could consistently defeat them. The humans had done more than just win individual conflicts. They had shattered the fundamental assumption that predators were naturally superior to prey species. "They fight like us," Thaxmore growled, his voice carrying across the rocky amphitheater where the gathering was taking place. "But they think like something else entirely. They predict our moves, counter our strategies, and defeat our warriors, but then they spare our lives and offer to trade with us." The assembled raiders shifted uneasily. In their culture, strength was everything, but human behavior didn't fit any category of strength they understood. Humans could fight, but they chose not to kill. They could dominate, but they offered partnership instead. It was profoundly unsettling to species whose entire worldview was based on the concept of natural dominance hierarchies. "What does the Great Pack Leader Council?" asked War Chief Scarl, her battle axe gleaming in the firelight. Thaxmore's expression was grim. "The pack leader says we have three choices. We can continue raiding human settlements and face certain defeat. We can avoid human space entirely and accept the loss of territory and hunting grounds. Or we can do something that goes against every instinct our species has developed over millions of years." The gathering fell silent, waiting for him to continue. "We can accept their offer to negotiate." The reaction was immediate and explosive. Raiders howled in outrage, weapons were drawn, and several minor chiefs challenged the very suggestion. But Thaxmore raised his voice above the chaos with the authority of a leader who had never been defeated in single combat. "Listen to me," he roared. "I have fought humans. I have seen what they can do. They are not prey, and they are not predators as we understand them. They are something new, and we can either learn to deal with this new reality, or we can go extinct fighting against it." The truth was hard for the raiders to accept, but it was undeniable. Human settlements now existed throughout what had once been prime raiding territory, and every attack on human assets had resulted in failure. Worse, the humans' reputation for mercy had begun to attract prey species that had never before been able to resist raider attacks. Former victims were allying with humans and learning defensive techniques that made traditional raiding increasingly difficult. "If we negotiate," Scarl asked carefully, "what would humans want from us?" Thaxmore activated a holographic display showing communication transcripts from human diplomatic channels. "They want to hire us." The gathering erupted in confused chatter. The concept of being employed by former prey was so alien that many raiders couldn't even process it. "They need security forces for their shipping operations," Thaxmore explained. "They want raiders to escort civilian vessels through dangerous space, protect mining operations, and patrol trade routes. They're offering payment in credits, territorial rights, and something they call legitimacy." The last concept was the most foreign of all. Raiders took what they wanted through strength. The idea of being given official recognition and legal authority was completely outside their cultural experience. But some of the younger war chiefs were beginning to understand the implications. Legal authority meant they could operate openly instead of hiding in the shadows. Territorial rights meant they could establish permanent bases instead of constantly moving to avoid retaliation. And steady payment meant they could support larger populations and better equipment than the boom and bust cycle of raiding allowed. "They're not trying to defeat us," War Chief Vash realized aloud. "They're trying to recruit us." It was a strategy that was simultaneously brilliant and terrifying in its implications. Humans weren't just winning conflicts with raider groups. They were converting them into allies by offering them something more attractive than traditional raiding. They were taking the galaxy's most dangerous predator species and turning them into a security force under human direction. Back on Earth, in a secure conference room deep beneath the surface of Geneva, The true scope of humanity's galactic strategy was being discussed by a small group of individuals whose existence was known only to the highest levels of human government. The Galactic Integration Project had been humanity's most closely guarded secret, a century-long plan to position humanity as the dominant species in galactic civilization without firing a shot or conquering a single world. Director Chen, an elderly woman whose sharp eyes belied her frail appearance, reviewed the latest reports from human operatives throughout the galaxy. "The Ursine clans are moving toward full alliance," she announced to the assembled planners. "The Crystalline Collective is undergoing a philosophical revolution that will ultimately favor human-style adaptability. The Bloodclaw Raiders are 3 months away from accepting employment contracts." General Morrison, the project's military coordinator, nodded approvingly. "The conversion rate is exceeding all projections. We expected to achieve significant influence within 50 years. At the current rate, we'll have effective control over galactic security architecture within 20. "Control is the wrong word," corrected Dr. Sarah Kim, the project's chief xenobiologist. "We're not controlling anything. We're making ourselves indispensable." There's a crucial difference. The distinction was important because it represented the fundamental philosophy behind humanity's approach to galactic expansion. Traditional conquest required constant military pressure to maintain control. But making yourself indispensable created a situation where other species actively wanted you to expand your influence because it benefited them as well. "The beauty of the approach," Director Chen explained to the newest members of the planning committee, "is that we're not taking anything away from other species. We're adding value to their existing capabilities. The Ursine clans are stronger with human tactical support. The Crystalline Collective is more effective with human adaptability principles. Even the Bloodclaw Raiders are more successful as security contractors than they ever were as simple raiders." It was a form of expansion that was virtually immune to resistance, because resistance would require other species to give up advantages they had grown to depend on. Humans had made themselves not just allies, but necessary partners throughout the galaxy. "What about the Council itself?" asked Colonel Vance, who had recently been assigned to monitor political developments. "How are they adapting to the new reality?" Dr. Kim activated a holographic display showing the latest council proceedings. "They're restructuring their entire classification system to accommodate adaptive species. But more importantly, they're beginning to realize that human-style adaptability might be the key to surviving in an increasingly complex galaxy." The display showed proposals being debated in the council chambers for educational exchange programs that would teach other species human tactical thinking, diplomatic techniques, and strategic planning. Species throughout the galaxy were beginning to see human adaptability not as a threat to natural order, but as an evolution beyond natural order that they wanted to participate in. "We're not just becoming part of galactic civilization," Director Chen observed with quiet satisfaction. "We're becoming the template for galactic civilization's future development." The implications were staggering. Within a generation, human thinking and human approaches to problem-solving would be standard throughout the galaxy. Not through conquest or coercion, but because other species would choose to adopt human methods after seeing their effectiveness. As the meeting concluded, and the planners dispersed to their various assignments, Director Chen remained behind to review the final reports from the frontier colonies. The transformation was remarkable to witness. 6 months ago, humans had been classified as harmless prey species, suitable only for agricultural settlements. Today, human colonies served as strategic nodes that coordinated security, trade, and diplomatic relations across dozens of sectors. The galaxy was becoming more peaceful, more prosperous, and more stable under human influence. But perhaps most importantly, it was becoming more adaptive, more flexible, and more capable of handling unexpected challenges. Humans hadn't just joined galactic civilization, they had upgraded it. The age of rigid species roles and unchanging natural law was ending. The age of adaptation, cooperation, and strategic thinking had begun. And at the center of this transformation was humanity, a species whose greatest strength was their refusal to be limited by any single definition of what they could become. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had planned from the beginning.